The railway stretched across the deserted field, creaking with old rails overgrown with weeds. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting everything in reddish tones. In the distance, the long howl of an approaching train echoed, carried by the wind along with the trembling of steel wheels. But on this track, a story was beginning that no one would believe. Beneath the rusty sleepers hid an old tortoise, crouching in the grass. It looked ordinary, slow, but it was destined to play a role in what was about to happen. Nearby, a young goat wandered along the embankment, sniffing the iron rails curiously, as if sensing something. There was worry in its eyes. Out from the bushes along the embankment came a man. He wore a worn coat and carried a heavy bag on his shoulder. He stopped when he heard the goat's plaintive bleating and stepped closer. The man didn't suspect that a predator was already hidden nearby, watching his every move. A tiger, striped like the shadows of sunset, crept between the rusty supports. Its eyes burned green, ears pressed flat against its skull. It stared now at the goat, now at the man, choosing who would be its first victim. The tortoise slowly tucked in its head, sensing danger. The goat suddenly raised its head and bleated loudly, as if warning the man. He frowned, turned, and caught sight of the striped back flickering through the grass. His heart jumped. He understood that the tiger was ready to strike. Suddenly, the tiger leapt forward. The man tried to step back, but the predator was faster. Its powerful body crashed onto him, pinning him to the ground right beside the rails. The sound of its growl drowned out the rumble of the approaching train. The goat ran frantically nearby, but didn't flee. It was as if it knew that fate was being decided right now. The tortoise crawled closer, its shell reflecting the last rays of the Sunday. Even the weakest animals seemed to be trying to intervene. The man tried to shield himself with his arms, fighting back, but the claws tore at his clothing. The situation was desperate. In the distance, the grinding wheels of the train were already screaming it would thunder past in just seconds. At that moment, the tortoise unexpectedly slid beneath the tiger's paw. The predator hadn't noticed it and pressed down directly onto the hard shell. The beast lost balance for a split second and loosened its grip. The man jerked free, clutching the goat by its back. The tiger roared more furiously and prepared to leap again. But just then, the ground shook so violently that even the beast froze for a heartbeat. The train was only a few dozen meters away. The giant iron mass thundered straight toward them. The man and the goat pressed against the embankment, but the tiger, blinded by the train's headlights, stumbled across the tracks. The tortoise, almost deliberately, stopped in front of it, forcing the predator to leap. And that leap turned out to be fateful. When it seemed everything was over, a loud trumpeting blast shattered the air. From behind the hill, as if nature itself had decided to intervene, came an elephant. Its massive body blocked out the sunset, and its steps shook the earth more than the train itself. The tiger, sensing a rival, stepped back with a snarl toward the giant, but the elephant strode forward with certainty, raised its trunk, and let out a thunderous call powerful enough to split the night. Everything around froze. The man, breathing heavily, pressed the goat to his chest and stepped back. It felt to him that now fate would be decided without him. The goat trembled, but its eyes were fixed on the elephant. The tiger tried to circle around the colossus, but the elephant dropped a tusk sharply, blocking its path. The tortoise lingered nearby like an unseen ally, while the goat lifted its head and bleated softly, as if offering encouragement. The train thundered past, its lights tearing the darkness before disappearing into the distance. For a fleeting moment, all the figures, the man, the goat, the tiger, the elephant, and the tortoise, froze in the bright glare, like a painting come to life in the night. The elephant stepped closer and gently nudged the man with its trunk, guiding him and the goat away from the rails. At first, the man recoiled, but then realized it was an act of help. not a threat. The tiger, however, couldn't stand it any longer and leapt again. But at that very moment, the elephant slammed its foot into the ground, shaking the earth and forcing the beast to tumble aside. For the first time, the predator looked uncertain. The goat, feeling sudden bravery, darted forward and planted itself between the man and the tiger. A tiny creature against a massive predator, it looked impossible. The tortoise crawled forward too, as if sharing the little one's courage. The elephant trumpeted again, and the tiger retreated further. It understood. The odds were against it. Its eyes darted wildly, but all around were allies, ready to defend one another. The man struggled to his feet, his clothes torn, but gratitude shone in his eyes. He looked at the elephant, the goat, and the tortoise, and realized for the first time this was no accident, but a miracle. The tiger, knowing it had been beaten, let out one last growl and slunk into the shadows. Its striped back vanished into the brush, and silence once again settled over the railway. Only the man's heart still pounded louder than the steel tracks. The elephant moved closer, lowered its head, and allowed the goat to brush its nose against the trunk. The little creature bleated softly, as if in thanks. The tortoise stopped at the man's feet, its slow gaze speaking louder than any words. The man smiled for the first time in a long while. He understood that miracles happen even where steel and iron have long replaced nature. On this abandoned track, a story was born, one that children would be told for generations. As the train disappeared into the distance and darkness wrapped around the rails, all the heroes stayed together. The man, the goat, the tortoise, and the elephant gazed toward the place where the tiger had vanished. They knew this was only the beginning, but for now the most important thing was that they had survived together. The night grew deeper, but the bond between the unlikely companions grew stronger. The goat nestled close to the man, while the tortoise rested by the elephant's massive foot, as if finding safety there. Overhead, the moonlight painted silver lines along the rails, giving the scene a surreal, dreamlike glow. The man gathered himself and checked his torn bag. From inside, he pulled out a flask of water and poured some into his palm. The goat eagerly licked it up, while even the elephant lowered its trunk, curious, gently drawing in the scent. It was as if all barriers between species had dissolved under the shared miracle. Far in the distance, a low rumble echoed again. The man tensed, fearing the tiger's return. But instead, it was only another train, its lights distant. A reminder that life beyond this wild encounter still moved on, uncaring. Yet here, by the rails, something extraordinary was unfolding, far more important than the cold rhythm of machines. The elephant slowly lowered itself onto its knees, bringing its eyes closer to the man and the small creatures. It was an unspoken gesture of peace, a silent acknowledgement that it had joined their fragile alliance. The tortoise stretched its neck toward the massive creature, as if blessing the moment. The man, exhausted but filled with awe, finally whispered, "Thank you." His words were lost in the night air, but the goat's soft bleat and the elephant's gentle rumble carried the meaning further. The rails lay silent once more. Yet on this forgotten stretch of track, a legend had been born, one of courage, unity, and the night when the strongest and the weakest stood together.